first episode of Absolute AppSec. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on Twitter, joined by my co-host Seth Law at Seth Law on Twitter. Seth, say hi.
Hey, everybody. Welcome once again to Absolute AppSec. Today we've got Evan Johnson joining us again after a good year-long reprieve, I guess, from Evan's perspective. Evan was one of the first guests that we had on the podcast way back when we were super unprofessional. Nowadays, we're just kind of unprofessional. So, but welcome again, Evan. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Last time I was on, I drank a lot of beer during the podcast, and now you do it at 9 a.m, and I can't do that in a social way.
Yes, we are well aware of that. There's a reason why it got more professional. We stopped doing it, like 10 o'clock at night. And I mean, maybe we should have like a Absolute AppSec after dark. I don't know, whatever.
There we go.
Can say what we really think.
You don't say what you really think?
Oh, I don't? No, I'm pretty sure I do. It just,
I know I do.
Yeah. There's a couple of items last week. We were off. Ken and I were both at Global AppSec DC. I got it right the first time this time, where we taught our course, went well, met a lot of people. If you came up to us and said hi, great. If you attended the course, great. Thanks for reaching out. It's always fun to actually meet people face to face rather than just online. Next week, there won't be a show, or if there is, it'll be a live show from Amsterdam, where we'll be at Global AppSec Amsterdam. So Ken and I will be teaching the course there again, secure code review. If you don't have the opportunity to come to one of the courses, please reach out to us. Ken and I do provide that content if you're trying to learn how to do code reviews. It's not like a secret that we have. We'd love for you to come and take the course with us and actually get the hands-on experience. But if you don't have that opportunity, there's the Secure Code Developer podcast that we gave previously that kind of walks through it shortly, but also the content is out there. We'd love to provide it to you. Other than that, I don't think we didn't really have an AppSec minute today, but Evan actually brought something up that was before we went live that's been going around the Twitterverse, the security Twitterverse, or the security drama verse, whatever you want to call it. And it's a recent vulnerability from Tavis, right? Evan, you want to give us a quick background on what it is? You were tracking a bit more than we are.
Yeah, it's a LastPass vulnerability in the Chrome I don't know if it's all extensions, but at least the Chrome extension where you can end up a malicious web page could potentially do a clickjacking attack on the user of a LastPass user and retrieve the previous site's password that was auto-filled in. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this one's an interesting one for sure. I mean, obviously, people are on Twitter. They're going to freak out because it's a password for a site that they're not currently on, right? And rightfully so. It's bad. That's a serious vulnerability. Needs to be fixed. It looks like from the write-up, and Ken, I don't know if you posted this yet, but the write-up from Tavis, it does seem like it's a Mozilla extension or browser extension. It seems to cover each of them. So it's every LastPass install. I mean, it has been patched, but it was in every single version.
Yeah, I'm going to put the actual link to the bug. That link I just posted was for the Ars Technica write-up on it. And here's the actual, let me put this, there we go. There's the actual, I'm covering Evan's face when I do this, by the way. Just realized there. I'll switch it for temporarily. But yeah, that link it just describes the technical aspects of that bug, which is like clickjacking, essentially.
Yeah, 2019 clickjacking. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, and honestly, I think, well, I can't speak for everybody, but I've always looked at clickjacking as like okay, cool, but like the use case here where you're able to see the creds of the last place they logged in, using LastPass with the Chrome or Opera extension. Yeah, it's kind of cool, I guess. I thought it was interesting that you said, Evan, that some folks were like, which I could totally see this. They're like, ditch your password manager, go back to whatever other means of password management they had, which is like probably sticky notes, probably writing it down, probably just using some easy to remember password, the same password everywhere.
Yeah, I've seen every hot take from we report on LastPass on our risk register. Not to put the person who said that on blast. I saw somebody say that in another Slack group I'm in, where they said we put LastPass on our risk register that we report on at our executive and board level. And then also, what are you doing using LastPass? But at the end of the day, you look at this bug and it's like, okay, Tavis found a serious bug. It's clear that there's a lot of spaghetti code there, but the LogMeIn and LastPass team are still fixing these bugs and got to it promptly and auto patched, and for the most part, they're good to go. And thank goodness they're getting all this great security research from Tavis to make their product better.
Yeah.
So it's kind of wild to me to see these hot takes because the alternative is not very pretty.
Yeah, I always find it interesting on Twitter. It's so hard to predict what people are going to lose their minds about, right?
Yeah.
Like okay, the three of us, we read through that technical, and we're like, okay, yeah, clickjacking, all right, yeah, it's serious. There's a vulnerability here, and then it's like, oh, it's auto patched. All right, so I'm going to make sure that LastPass isn't at that version, and we're going to move on. And yet, it is indicative that there's probably other problems that exist there. But bringing it up to executives, serious shit, right?
Serious-ish is what I was calling it. Serious-ish. I don't know that I would. Okay, out of all the bugs that the three of us have seen, and that the people watching this podcast have seen, where does that rank, really? I mean, honestly, not to be a jerk about it or to undermine the research, but do you know how many horrible bugs I've seen? This doesn't even this doesn't even scratch the surface for me. I don't, again, you guys might have different opinions, but that's my take, is this doesn't even really register as much to me.
No.
Keep using LastPass, they'll patch it, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, okay, switch to 1Password, right? If you're really worried about it, exactly. But I can guarantee you that there's something with 1Password that's probably just as serious that hasn't been discovered yet. Heaven forbid, Tavis changed his target from LastPass to 1Password or whatever. But I mean, there's always those risks that exist that are out there. The issue that I have is that there's more, the custom stuff that your teams are developing probably have much bigger issues in them than what's going on with LastPass, right? I mean, I know we've all seen that from the consulting perspective, or even being embedded in an organization, as the stuff that we probably can't talk about is way worse than, hey, there's one cred that actually got exposed and we're going to have to rotate that, right? Realistically. So I'm with you, Ken, on that one. Anyway. Yeah,
not super afraid of how that's going to play out. But yeah. LastPass they had a serious breach a few years back, though, right? One that was actually serious, where I think, God, I don't remember the details, but I think it was actually data being leaked or had been stolen or something. I could be completely. Yeah, I don't want to.
They were breached in 2016 or something. I can't remember. And it's good to note, though, that this was their main user database, which is completely separate from the password database. Yeah. And having worked there and seen the real separation, so while potentially your master password's hash could have been leaked or something, which is super serious. I'm not downplaying a data breach. That's insane. It's the actual risk to people's passwords is essentially nil.
Pretty minimal. Yeah.
Damn, they've had. I'm looking at the LastPass on Wikipedia, and it's security issues: 2011 security incident, 2015 security breach, 2016 security incidents, 2017 security incidents. Two of which were from Tavis, by the way. One was the LastPass Chrome extension, and another was an RCE. based on navigating to a hold on. What now? Sorry, discovered an additional security flaw allowing remote code execution based on the user navigating to a malicious website.
I think that one was in the LastPass. You can install some little extra binary on your machine, and it was in that. What's definitely true about LastPass, having written a lot of code for them, is a lot of the code is spaghetti, and especially on the browser side of like autofilling passwords into, like, that's actually really hard to do when you consider everybody wants their passwords to autofill magically and work properly. When you go to a website and click your password, you want it to autofill, and then that's all fine and dandy. But then it only takes a few websites doing crazy things to make that logic really complicated. Like if you've ever logged into Fidelity, I made the autofill logic for Fidelity work once in the LastPass extension. And when you fill in the username, you have to press tab or click in the password field to like obfuscate the username. They do that weird username obfuscation thing.
That's right. Yeah.
Where the last like 8 letters or numbers switch to asterisks or like dots or something. So it just like a couple of those make the extension just insane. There are some people who use frame sets for their login page, and or iframes where you're on the /login, but the actual place you put your password in is in a separate iframe, and it's just like all the stuff makes it insane.
Yeah, I can see that being a problem, right? So you're not shocked is basically
super hacky.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's super hacky, but the at the end of the day, the alternative is a lot worse. And if you don't want to use LastPass, you're free to use another password manager, and and also you don't have to use something in browser. Like all of these bugs are always the browser extensions. Oh, my cat just joined my desk here.
Hi, what's your cat's name?
Kiwi.
Kiwi?
Yeah.
All right, now I know one of your security.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh no! Oh shoot!
Go change them all.
What high school did you go to?
Change my cat's name. That's easier.
That's awesome. Sorry. Didn't mean to air out your security question. I'm just making this shit up. Hey, by the way, I did look at how many days it's been since you were last on the podcast. It was 1 year and 8 months and 16 days ago.
Wow.
Yep. That's close to 2 years ago that you were on here. So that's.
I'm glad you guys had me back. I just had to wait long enough for you guys to forget how much of a train wreck I was.
Nah, no, not at all. Yeah, no, we're happy to have you back. I mean, well, and I guess we should probably talk about Evan since it's been so long.
Yeah.
Evan runs product security at CloudFlare. Evan's spoken at a whole bunch of places. Like I mentioned, one of those was on this podcast, but he's spoken at a bunch of conferences. Do you attend the OWASP Bay Area, or do you help run that? I can't remember.
I attend once in a while. I know Leaf, I think Leaf does a lot of that. I haven't been too involved.
Yeah, I just know that it seems like you, Leaf. I know that there's a few folks, Asta, who are all involved in that, and I just couldn't remember. But yeah, so Cloudflare obviously recently IPO. There's some stuff we can talk about, some stuff we can't. But one of those things is like basically just talking about what your role is there as product security, as the head of product security, talking about what your program consists of, and just walking us through your day. What do you do?
Oh, great! I get up around. At Cloudflare, our product security team really has 2 jobs, and the first is we work with all of the engineering teams to help them either ship their products more securely or do whatever they're doing in a secure way where we're not opening up our customers to any new risks. We're not opening up the company to any new risks. And then lastly, I think that we're the watchdogs where we make sure that we're not shipping an insecurity product where we're not actually solving any problems, where we're actually getting like meaningful security with the things that we're offering. And then the other thing that product security is at Cloudflare is we're an engineering team. So we build new security controls. We build new features. Occasionally, we basically own the changes that we want to see in production and in the product. Whether it's a new feature, a new security control, a new network vulnerability scanner, whatever it is.
Yeah. And for like contrast, our team at GitHub, we just called it AppSec and did all of those functions. And then it was split out from product security, building, like you just said, more of the security controls, and then AppSec being its own thing that does like bug bounties and like pull request reviews and like new apps that are going, reviews of new apps and new features and just things like that. Like more of the, like I think you use the term watchdog, like more of that kind of work. And then working with CERT, if something happens, security incident response.
When something happens.
If something happens. When something happens is the better, exactly. That's when something happens. Which, by the way, if like you have a CERT team, treat them well, because those poor people, it's like you're always on call, and it's just what a rough job. Like I have a lot of sympathy for what they have to go through. That's a really tough job. You know what, Seth, we need to get somebody from a CERT team on here, actually, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, that would be, it'd be interesting to talk to them, right? Especially from an AppSec perspective, what they do on the CERT side of things. But yeah, that's a tough job, right? I think we've all been involved with it at some level, but if you're the front line of defense there, it's hard. It's a lot of sleepless nights.
Does your team do any of those activities, Evan?
We get involved in basically every product security incident that is happening. We are there to help resolve it and do some of the cleanup. So yeah, anytime something goes wrong where it's one of our products, we're right there.
That makes sense. It does make sense, right? You're going to have that domain specific knowledge when it comes to like code security and I mean, I imagine Cloudflare is a pretty big target, just because so much traffic flows through Cloudflare. You're responsible for so much, just like networking traffic.
Oh yeah, and it's oftentimes hard. We get bug bounty reports and stuff where people are learning the properties of HTTP in our bug bounty, where they are like, "Hey, I can request to Cloudflare's Edge, and I change the host header, and I get back different results." And it's like, yeah, that's called HTTP. Like, way to go. And so, and that's an easy one. But when things get more complicated and you're getting into like weird edge cases and RFCs where you're trying to split hairs between, well, did the RFC author mean this or this, and then what's the right behavior here, and it can get really challenging.
Yeah. Well, that was one of my favorite. It does seem like there's a lot of that goes on. I mean, I see it in reports that clients give us. Like they're like, "Oh, this was tested last year." There's a finding in there that somebody copied the cookie values from one browser to another and could still see the content. And I'm like, great. Yeah, that's exactly how stateless sessions work. Good job. And then when they logged out of the first browser, it logged out of the other one as well. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we definitely see that, but the edge cases, I'm sure, they're always more difficult.
Pay that consultant.
This was after me, or this was before we came in, but it's been a running joke since then. As we're like, oh no, it uses get. Yeah. People don't understand. Anyway, other than that, like the other thing I wanted to ask you about was the whole, like, you were involved pretty heavily on the Cap One breach, like from a reporting perspective, like surprisingly so, right? You were all famous and being interviewed by, I don't know what, CNN, is that what it was? Or
that kind of blew up in an unexpected way. I wrote some blog post and it got retweeted a bunch, and then I talked with Krebs about it.
Yeah.
And then from there, it really blew up. Like I talked with Fortune and some folks in the government who wanted to understand it a little better. and the technical take, the hot take that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just really interesting how it kind of blew up.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel like that was linked because Krebs linked to it initially, that, it really took off? Is that where it came from, or was it something else that you did? I mean, obviously just having a hot take about it, I'm sure was helpful and something documented.
Yeah, just juicy takes on Twitter will take you far in life, I guess, is what I learned from that. But Krebs, I think somebody big retweeted it, and then Krebs included it in an article about the metadata service in AWS.
Yeah.
Read about it here. And then from there, a lot of people were interested.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense. It was at least your process and reasoning was all very well thought out. Again, a lot of the hot takes on Twitter were, they did absolutely everything wrong, and it was an open S3 bucket, and we're like, no, it really wasn't. But
one of the crazy things was explaining the technical concepts of like AWS to non-technical people through that process, and they're like, why wasn't Capital One reading their? I've heard of this in CloudTrail. Why wasn't Capital One reading all of their CloudTrail logs? And I was explaining, like, well, when you have 100 AWS accounts and like a multi-million AWS bill, you're getting hundreds of millions of CloudTrail events a day. And how many people are you going to pay to read that?
Mm-hmm.
And then like just talking about the metadata service, describing it to somebody who's non-technical was challenging.
Yeah. So there's something that runs on the server that tells the server what it is. I don't get. Yeah. I can see that being a challenging, discussion. Explain that to your mom. Good luck with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, orchestration in general is not like the easiest thing to explain to anybody who's not doing that for a living.
It's like, all right, so you know what hypervisors are.
That's the baseline.
No. I can't help you then.
Is that what kids with ADD have? Oh man, that's a rough one. And another big thing that happened with you was that you were on the floor of the stock exchange in New York for the CloudFlare IPO, which is pretty exciting. I'm curious what that experience was like. I mean, like, is it like really crazy I've never obviously been, so I don't know. Like, is it crazy on the floor, or is it?
It was a lot of standing around.
Really?
Yeah, it was super fun. It was an awesome experience. I'll probably never get to do again. But the actual floor was like, you're there for a couple hours and there's not a lot to do. Whereas in my role, I'm not like involved in any of that. I just happened to get to go. I won an internal lottery, which allowed me to go to the stock exchange, and it was a lot of fun.
Was it like chaotic, like they show on TV, where it's just like pure chaos and crazy and like?
Have you ever seen the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy?
I have. Love it.
Freud?
Yeah.
That's what I imagined, where there's all these guys trading orange juice futures and it's just madness. But I didn't see any of that.
Oh, it was like pretty like
standard. Now it's all computers. That's not fast enough anymore, right? That's the whole thing.
Oh, computers are ruining my idea of the stock exchange now. Dang it. That's got to be pretty cool though. It's gonna be like a fun experience. Like, so again, it's something that most of us never get to see or do.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. The whole experience of it all, like seeing the big Cloudflare banner up there on the front of the stock exchange, and the kind of in like being there in the room, like you've seen it on TV a ton of times, but being there and actually seeing all the machines out there and all these traders with their candle charts everywhere. I saw the candle charts and my first thought was, are these people trading Bitcoin? Because you go to GS and you always see the candle graph.
Oh yeah.
It's
Sounds
just
like
a more
it.
mature version of Bitcoin, right? That's
Yeah.
what options are, or stocks are. So no, it makes sense. Well, like to go back to that though, like that experience is cool, but like in the run up to that, I know that there's all like the SEC like regulations about, what you can do and say. I know we wanted to have you back on the podcast, a month ago or whatever, but you're like Cloudflare was prepping for the IPO, and that was one of the things that you couldn't come on. But from a day-to-day perspective, did that actually affect what you were doing internally?
Yeah, I learned that once we filed our S1, there's something called a quiet period. I'd never heard of that, and so I wasn't able to come on. But then but day to day, like it affected me none, really. I'm just securing things, security and security accessories. So we're just making sure that we kept the lights on and we were doing our jobs and tried not to get distracted with all the hoopla.
Yeah, makes sense, right?
And not reading any articles, because just nothing good. You can just sit there reading articles about your company every day, and it just is not a good use of your time.
Yeah. It's that whole inflated ego, Cloudflare's the best thing ever, right?
I didn't read many of those articles. No.
Those are articles you wanted to read.
Send those over. I'd love to read those ones.
I mean, you started with Cloudflare when they were pretty small, right? Like, you originally started a few years ago, I thought.
Yeah, when I joined, the security team was me and the head of security, and I joined in 2015 when there was about 120 people.
Dang,
that's small. Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. I left for like a year and some change, but the company's just been steadily growing, and the security team is now getting larger, and we're getting pretty mature where we have like real functions and teams and stuff. Like I'm leading product security, and we have like a real compliance team and compliance certifications. Who knew? And then a bunch of other stuff. So it's kind of crazy to go from just 2 people with a free HackerOne account that somebody just signed up for, and we kind of like made a lot more problems with that than we solved, just not having the resources to staff it. But going from that to an IPO where we have a whole team and a lot of smart people solving a lot of problems at once, it's kind of wild.
Yeah. So yeah, let's dig into that a little bit, like what Cloudflare is actually doing. Because on the back end, you've got all your security functions and everything like that. But from like a consumer or a business perspective, there's a lot of security functionality that comes from Cloudflare that we depend on, right? I know you were talking about the Cloudflare Access stuff. I do want to talk about that some, because that's a fairly new feature. The 1.1.1.1 app and everything that goes along with that. Like it feels like we're depending on Cloudflare for a lot more security. And even from a consumer perspective, people don't realize that they're depending on Cloudflare, even though they are. So, maybe talk about that a little bit, just so people can, if people aren't familiar with Cloudflare, they can at least understand it a little bit better.
Yeah, the 1.1.1.1 app, we announced it, I think, April 1st, and it's not a VPN, but it's a consumer. It's basically gives you protection for your communications over the wire, and that's been a really interesting engineering. Like a lot of engineering work went into that and is still going into it since it's not publicly released yet. I think they added some folks to a beta, but I still don't think it's publicly released. And that's been really exciting to work on, the engineering internals of it. What
was the driver for that, right? Like I know you guys had the secure DNS, which was yeah, and then 1.1.1.1 has been out for a while as far as being a DNS provider, but what was the thinking behind offering that up? It seems to fit a little bit into Cloudflare, like opening up the internet and like making things easier, but like why concentrate on the security aspect there?
On the security aspect, I mean, we are close to a lot of eyeballs, and we can provide people a performant like virtual connection to our edge, and so it's pretty cool. And the thing that I really was worried about with it was if this thing really takes off, like we're responsible for a lot of communication that we didn't previously see, and people are going to be crossing borders with that. People are going to be with that app. People are going to be like using it to they're going to be installing it, and I'm sure people will install it in hostile areas and use it. And so we have a pretty large responsibility to make sure that it's pretty bulletproof. And then the technology behind it is really neat. It's all based on WireGuard, the WireGuard protocol, and we open sourced the actual thing that runs inside of both the application and the server on our GitHub. It's called Boring Tune, github.com/cloudflare/boring TUN. And so that's like our Rust implementation of the WireGuard protocol. And every client gets their own private key and public key pair, and then then they'll connect to our edge and we'll receive most of their traffic or all their traffic.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean, in the world of private VPNs, it makes sense going to you guys because you already are providing the edge for so many different companies that, yeah, it should be more performant. It's the same reason that the DNS stuff works so well, at least in, my perspective is pointing at you guys is a lot easier than pointing at some of those others, especially like the local ISP where, you're faster than they are, even though they're closer to me. It's always an interesting issue unless you understand how DNS works and then you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But realistically, most people are going to point at their local DNS provider and or their DHCP DNS provider.
We do DNS pretty well. So, and we have a lot of points of presence. So it usually is pretty good.
Yeah. Yep.
Holy crap. I'm looking. So I was like, oh, I'll just go to the Cloudflare org on GitHub and just like scroll through and find the repo that you're talking about. And your company has open source. There are 9 separate pages of just open source repos that you all have, 243 public repos. That's insane. Yeah. That's crazy. You never see that. Never. Like that's
a lot of companies do. I think that's a function of us running a lot of our own infrastructure and having really specific needs. And a lot of companies, like I know Airbnb has a ton of. When I was at Segment, I saw engineering all hands presentations where they actually tracked the number of stars they had, and we don't get a ton of stars. And I think that's mostly a function of us having really specific needs because we run our own infrastructure. But we do open source a ton of like interesting things that usually end up being like the go-to for people also doing that thing. So an example is like Go RTR, an RPKI to router server that we wrote. And that's really a lot of people, I think, doing RPKI are using that specific library.
Yeah. I'm going to put a link to that, by the way, because that's one I had come across when browsing and was surprised. I mean, it's just insane, like the amount of cool stuff.
It's like driving BGP security only has 117 stars on GitHub. But you can like make a front end library that's everybody can use that gets tens of thousands of stars, and one's not better than the other, but because it's so specific and niche, it doesn't get a lot of attention.
Sorry, I'm trying to make sure that I get all the links for this stuff. It's crazy. There's so many code bases here.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely, the product of being in a like engineering focused organization, right? And I appreciate that too from the Segment guys, or even like Netflix and others, that they just like release the projects and they're not concerned about, hey, how many stars it gets or whatever else it is. It's more about, guess what? This was useful to us, and maybe somebody else can use it. Like I always go back to my, banking days when, anything that we thought about, they would never want to talk or tell anyone about, because someone maybe at one point could use that to know that, hey, we use this for monitoring of one little aspect or one little application. And I'm like, really? This is like, we know every other bank in the country is dealing with the same issue, and we can't like come together and come up with a good solution for this. But
yeah, but it's a cultural thing for sure as well. A lot of people are averse to open sourcing things, and we'd rather open source it and share it, even if it's specific or niche or like only useful to us, just because we think it's cool.
We actually got this question in our course. This was it? That was last week. Yeah, last week, because we have all of our material out on a public repo, and someone was like, "Well, are you concerned that it's not it's not password protected? You're okay with that? You're not concerned about that?" We're like, if you can get everything you need just from that like repo, then what's the point of us doing this? Like, and I feel it's the same way for code. Like, what people don't realize is it's not just the code that like is, powering. It's this whole system of, support and your availability and your marketing team and your sales team, and just like a whole bunch of things that all come together to make a successful company. If like your one thing is your special code, this isn't TV, it's not Silicon Valley. Like there's a lot that goes into a company other than just its code. So it's nice when you see people, or organizations, I should say, but yeah, ultimately people sharing code like that. It's awesome because you don't have to redo that stuff.
Yeah, we're definitely not the pharmaceutical industry where you can have like some secret sauce that makes you bajillions of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still trying to find the Coke recipe. Once I get that, rich.
Just Google it. I'm sure it's out there.
I'm sure it's out there. Yeah, it has to be, right?
It's a trade secret.
Yeah. That's now I'm actually gonna Google it. Now I'm curious.
So you're gonna post that Coke recipe. We're gonna get a takedown notice for this episode because it's got the Coke recipe embedded in it. Great, thanks, Ken.
Well, it's on Wikipedia. Normally to a very
can too.
What's that?
They put all the ingredients on the can.
That is true. Vault containing. There's like a vault for this thing too, for the secret formula.
There's a whole legal case. I took a law class in college. Coca-Cola versus Coca-Cola Bottling Company. I think it went to the Supreme Court.
Nice. I'm sure it's on the Wikipedia page, right?
I'm looking for it.
Wow, we're just all over the board today.
I know. These are my favorite episodes, though.
Yeah.
Cola. We don't need to. Wow. I can't find it. Coke versus Coke bottling. Yeah, I'm curious about this now.
So, well, Ken goes down the rabbit hole. Evan, what's next for you, right?
Like, click.
Yeah, exactly. What is it that's got your attention right now? I mean, obviously, like you just went through the IPO. You've been working on the one stuff. You're internally building out processes and everything. But kind of what's on your radar? What is it that you're paying attention to that seems interesting? And in AppSec specifically, but security in general.
Yeah, there's two things. One is the first is we built this feature that's available through CloudFlare Access for SSH certificates that we're starting to use internally, where you can SSH into we want to make it so when our SREs SSH into production, they do it with an SSH certificate signed by Cloudflare Access. And that's in the name of dog fooding. We want to do that to to use the product and find issues with it and make a better product. And I actually helped write some of the software for that. So I'm kind of involved and I care a lot about it. It's kind of, if you're familiar with Netflix's Bless, it's similar to that, where when you put the SSH certificate authority's public key into your SSH config, and then you can have an SSHCA sign a new key for a period of time that's good for a short period of time, and then you connect to the server using that key. And we're doing that and rolling that out internally, and that's one thing that has a lot of that I'm focused on. And then the other thing is we have all these security products, and I'm trying to bring about the idea of software assurance. I've never hear people in Silicon Valley talk about software assurance, but I bought an extremely expensive PDF from it's not the FAA, but some org that sells this thing, about what it takes to ship software in the aviation industry for commercial software. For any commercial flight, if you have software running on that flight, it has to go through this rigorous software assurance standard. It's like the FedRAMP of the aviation industry, and it's called the DO 178C. And I'm trying to bring some ideas from that into like our day job at Cloudflare, where we're so big and us doing the right thing is so important that every bug has to be treated like it'll crash the airplane. So we have to take every bug very seriously and make sure that we treat every bug as a security or reliability bug.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. Like Ken and I have been having a lot of discussions on when we're doing the secure code review stuff, as you're stepping through things and you've got like your AAA, but then we also talk about the CIA triad.
Mm-hmm.
And availability is one of those things that we don't like on the secure, like the software engineering side. Like QA may talk about it a little bit, but on the internet, it's one of those that we just kind of like, oh, it's a denial of service attack and that's it, right? Like that doesn't matter because it just goes down and then we spin up a new worker and it's fine.
Yeah, System D will restart it, so who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, what has the response to that been internally for your engineering teams? Are they for it? Like, how are you approaching that idea with them? I know I asked multiple questions.
I haven't said the word software assurance too often, and so it's kind of a boring sounding term. I don't think people will get excited when they hear it. So I try not to say that, and just pushing a little bit every single day on things that will make us more reliable, make us more robust, and make us feel that much better about the product that we have and the software we release.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, software assurance is like how you feel about it. You feel like this is a reliable thing. It's not measurable. But you can measure a bunch of things that make you feel good. Like, hey, we measured that we fixed X many bugs. We measured that we found 10 critical bugs that one quarter, and then 5 critical bugs the following quarter, and then 2 the following quarter. And we didn't find any. So we think that we have fewer bugs, and we feel better about this. And so it's not a measurable thing. And so kind of working through that. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's how you feel and trying to do things that make us feel a little better every day. 1%.
Yeah, I mean that's always an interesting problem, like from a reliability perspective, and like we go back to the guys that are sitting on the CERT team or the first line of support, and those are the ones that really fill it. I'm sure, right? I'm thinking back to like Hacker Tracker this year at DEF CON. Like, so DEF CON's the main event that people actually use the app at, and like on the iOS version, I had a bug at one point that like if you did a certain sequence, it would crash, right? Like the app would just completely just drop out. And we've all seen those apps on your, on your iPhone or your Android device that they just crash on you. But like tracking the number of people that sent things in when it was having problems, I'm like, okay, yeah, there's definitely a reliability issue. I may not know what it is, but I got to go fix it. And like, it's that whole software assurance. That's what you're speaking to. From my perspective as the guy supporting the app at the time, it was oh crap, like I got to go spend like 2 hours to figure out what's going on and like actually fix it. But you feel a lot better, to your point, after it, like when it stands up, like there's almost like a certain amount of pride that goes into the app that you built, the software that you're providing to someone, when it does what you say it does in a safe, secure, and reliable manner. But we always forget about that reliability aspect, even though it's probably the number one reason why you stop using an application, or you stop, like a consumer isn't going to use something that doesn't work.
Right.
Right. I mean, Ken, do you guys end up running into that a lot at GitHub, or like, I mean, where does reliability fit there from a product security perspective?
Really, I mean, it doesn't, well, I don't know. Hold on. I don't want to say something wrong here. So
wait. What you're saying is no one at GitHub cares about reliability. That's what I'm taking, right?
No, there's a difference between, so let's break it out. From the AppSec team, most of our stuff typically does not involve like reliability, right? I mean, most of the time that's not really what the bugs that we come across are affecting. Not to say that's not ever the case, just to say primarily that's not really. Now for product security, that absolutely is the case because they're building product security controls. So like if they introduce some like change to two-factor auth, or they restructure, I don't know, the forgot password flow or something like that, all of that absolutely can impact negatively reliability. And obviously most companies have like some service level agreement. I actually don't know what ours is. Just because, again, like I'm on the AppSec team, I just find bugs and triage them. I'm not like building in the security controls. And then from like just a reliability standpoint, now the one thing that we have had is DDoS attacks against our network, and that could potentially affect reliability. But the last time it happened, we bounced back pretty quickly. I think it was like 5 minutes or 8 minutes or something like that. Was it? I don't remember. This was a while. I think this is like right before or right when I started. So no, it was, I think it was, yeah, no. Actually, it was while I was there, because I remember, because everybody's like, oh, sorry about, like I heard about this thing that happened, and I was like, what happened? And so I was reading on Twitter and blogs about, apparently we'd been, suffered like the world's largest DDoS attack. And fewer than 10 minutes is what it says. So yeah, it's pretty freaking awesome to like.
There was a big DDoS on GitHub a few years ago for days, I remember.
Yeah. I still have that up. Yeah, I'm going to put the link into the TechCrunch article. But yeah, so that's the other piece at which, like, obviously anything network related like that, where, you can take down the site, that's a reliability issue. But yeah, we don't really, like, from the AppSec team, have too much that I can think of. Maybe I'm completely
Yeah, we're not too worried about our site and the reliability issues. Like, we care about bugs in our site and like regular AppSec type bugs. But like our edge, we had somebody from our team spend quite a bit of time working with these HTTP2 denial of service attacks that came out. And we wrote a whole blog post about that. There was about 6 or 7 CVEs that came out this year, and making sure that we were protected before the embargo date lifted, and making sure that we had actually tested that all of these denial of service attacks were mitigated, and some of them aren't really like things you can mitigate. They're just part of the protocol design and making sure that our limits were the right limits in the HTTP2 protocol. And so we care a lot about it at our edge. We had the big WAF outage in July, WAF outage from bad regex. And so it's not very fun to deal with. I was in the room for that one and just never fun to deal with a crisis.
No, but it is it's a learning opportunity. It's like a growth. Like those hard moments are what helps shape your outlook and your perspective and prepare you for future situations like that. And then, going back to the very beginning of this episode with the whole, like that bug with LastPass, and like, if you've worked blue team, if you've done defense, you come across much worse things than that. And so maybe it jades you a little bit, or maybe I don't know, maybe it just gives you the right perspective. I have no clue. Hey, by the way, I did look up and I read the Coca-Cola versus the Coca-Cola bottler. And because it's so fascinating, I'm just going to circle back to it real quick. So, and Evan can correct me if I'm summarizing this wrong, but what it read like was for 60 years, they had an agreement, the bottlers with Coke. Coke introduced Diet Coke in the early 80s. The bottlers claimed that it's a change to because of the change in the ingredient and the change in the cost to Coke to develop the syrup, the product for Diet Coke. It breached their original agreement, or it wasn't part of the original agreement, so they had to make a new agreement with flexible pricing. However, to prove that there was some cost differential plus the ingredient itself, the ingredients changed enough to make that, to render that previous contract null and void for this new setup. They basically said, you have to give us the bottlers said, we want Coke to bring the secret ingredients through this process, litigation process, reveal those secrets so that we can determine, whether or not we should have a new contract that changes the pricing and all that stuff. Does that sound about right?
And the big thing there was it was a trade secret. Coca-Cola said that the recipe was a trade secret, and that if I recall correctly, because I am not a lawyer and I don't pretend to play one on TV, I got I think an A- in my law class. So, but
so that's pretty much the same.
Yeah, lawyer A-, whatever. So there's all this stuff about what is a trade secret and the steps Coca-Cola went through to protect the trade secret, and I think they determined it was a trade secret, but they still had to reveal it to the bottling company.
That's crazy. Yeah, 7X -100. So there was 7X, and then there was 7X -100, and that's the secret sauce, the secret ingredient. That's super interesting. That's something you don't really think too much about, is what would happen if you because it's crazy. They just released a new flavor and then it was redo contracts, expose your trade secret. Who would have thought innovating would ruin you? Or, I obviously didn't ruin them, but you know what I mean? It causes so much drama.
I was surprised when I read that there was two companies, that it was a separate bottling company.
Yeah, weird, right?
It's weird.
Yeah, and if I remember right, that goes all the way back to when Coca-Cola first came out, right? The way that they structured the company was, okay, there's the one company that makes the syrup, and then they send the syrup out in packages and bottle it closer to the source, which kind of makes sense. But then it had to do with the distribution through the old soda fountains and things. It gets really weird when you go back that far with law and you realize everything's just one big house of cards, right? I'm going to play the nihilist today. So It all just needs to come crashing down at some point.
Let's take a turn.
But
Coca-Cola, this all needs to come crashing down.
yes, there you go. See, that's where it ends up. This is what you learn when you come on Absolute AppSec.
Well, okay. As a brief aside, during our
wait, this wasn't an aside. Is like an aside to our aside? Okay,
yeah, another one. So, which is just what this podcast basically is, just rambling. So we're okay with that. The course we have that section that everybody has in their slides where you do your bio. And but like Seth and I were talking about, like nobody reads those things. So we just made up stories about the other person. So like Seth made up a story about mine in my bio. It's just like this long, completely made. In fact, I have it here somewhere, but basically, oh my God, let me pull this up. It's worth reading because we talk about the soda wars. Because again, going even further into that, like in Utah where Seth's at, they have like these big soda like wars between the companies. So Seth, can you explain what like the soda stuff is out there, like that whole thing, while I pull up the slides?
Well, there's a local religious community, and they don't drink coffee, right? That's basically what it boils down to. So they have their own vices, and one of them is soda shops. So you can find these soda shops, and they'll put flavoring in the different sodas and sell them to you. But last year or the year before, there was actually a lawsuit where one of the soda shops or the chains sued the other one because they were using the name like Dirty Diet Coke, which one had like trademarked or copyrighted or whatever, saying they came up with it, which is basically just putting like coconut syrup in a Diet Coke or something like that, right? But they were suing each other over the terms that they were using for the actual drinks that they're serving, which are based on like, just your standard sodas that are out there, whether that's Diet Coke or whatever it is. So like there's this whole, if you ever come out to Utah, we'll go through one. That's what it boils down to, because it's just interesting the number of options that are out there as opposed to a coffee shop. So
wait, so
sorry, go ahead.
There's tons of sodas out in Utah.
Yeah. There's there, and you'll see a line like around the shop of minivans and other cars when you drive by, people waiting to pick up their Dirty Diet Coke or their Slam Bam Dr. Pepper, or whatever it is, right? It's
Slam Bam Dr. Pepper. And so like back to this soda war thing. So in the bio I wrote for Seth, it was it is, and by the way, so we like talk through our normal, like you would normally describe yourself and your background, but we keep this up on the thing to see if anybody even like pays attention to these slides. So if you're going to our course, you should just pay attention to those introductions, because they're not what we're saying. They're totally different. And his says, once known as the King of Cola, he ruled the mighty carbonators during the pre-century West Coast soda wars. His rule was cut short when high fructose corn syrup was outlawed by California and the sugar prohibition era began. He led the first manned mission to Mars via hot air balloon, without hot air or the balloon. He speaks 14 languages, 12 of them based on the science fiction show Star Trek. One he made up with his imaginary friend Sharzazel, and really, really poor old-timey English.
Yeah. What do I need to read yours now, Ken?
You can if you want, since we're rambling today. But yeah, I mean, it's just like if you're in the course, you should check out those slides, because we throw stuff up there just to see if people are paying attention. Yeah. So good times.
Today's episode,
wow, we really did go off on some tangents today.
Yeah,
today's episode, like minimal AppSec.
I keep trying to pull it back, and you have Ken like running down a rabbit hole about Coca-Cola formulas. Gosh.
Just to bring it back to Coca-Cola, guys. Just to bring it back.
Yeah, man. It's like adult ADD, basically, whatever.
So, though, to go back to CloudFlare Access,
yeah.
The whole WAF issue, like I heard through the grapevine that it actually caused, like with the WAF DOS that happened, that it actually caused problems with CloudFlare Access and you guys getting access or getting into your machine. Was that true? Like, what actually happened there?
Oh yeah. So since we use our own product, like if if the edge is having a reliability issue, it can be hard to get in. And so one of the things that we're super intentional about is making sure that we have our emergency plans set up and we have our run books set up, and it made for like a hectic 5 minutes where we were like, okay, we got to brush this dusty tome off and make sure that we know how to get back into our systems the good old fashioned way. But for the most part, because we have these backup ways, that it's not a very big deal. But it just made for a more hectic 4 minutes, 5 minutes while we figured out the old way.
Yeah, I mean, and like realistically, I'm pretty sure, and everybody that was using the internet was like, "Oh, that's not loading." And then by the time that they came back to it 20 minutes later, it was all fine, right? I'm sure for you guys internally, it was oh, this is a big problem because of the whole site reliability. Again, we go back to that, the site reliability issue and people being able to access the sites that they want to get to, but externally, realistically, people probably didn't notice it quite as much. So I don't think we linked to Cloudflare Access, but you said you were doing the SSH stuff associated with that, right?
Yeah, I actually built one of the features, and then the nice access team rebuilt it in a more production-ready way. But the actual SSH certificate signing and all of that stuff is a library that I wrote that's on my GitHub. It's open source.
Okay.
And that's available and people are using it. It's still early days and there's a lot more to do. The other thing that it does is when you use it, you use our command line tool, Cloudflare D, which opens up a tunnel to our edge from your server. So you can run Cloudflare D on a NATed server behind a bunch of stuff, and it'll connect to our edge. Then when you, Ken, that's the one, that link you just sent. When you SSH to your server that's behind the NAT, it goes through our edge and uses our edge as a jump host. And so together it kind of turns the Cloudflare edge into a jump host with short-lived access being granted through Cloudflare Access.
Interesting. So so basically the access to that SSH is using those Cloudflare policies, the access policies to get to it, correct?
Yeah, and so you can control who has access to your servers with your identity provider, basically. You can set groups and create policies where if you need SSH access, you're in the SSH people group, and then our edge will allow that or disallow that.
Uh-huh. So, I mean, it almost feels like I don't want to say poor man's, but it's like an alternate to setting up a VPN, right? Because you're using Cloudflare as you're logging in via like an identity provider, and then that's being provided to Cloudflare, and that's where the decisioning is happening, right?
Yeah, it's meant to be like a VPN replacement. It's what we use internally to replace our VPN is Cloudflare Access.
Cool.
We were tired of logging into it, and it's some old kludgy software and hardware. So we built our own, and it runs at the edge, so it's nice.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll make sure that's linked because that does sound very usable from a support perspective, and an alternate way to actually get to stuff. So
there's still a lot more work there to do, especially on the SSH certificate side. But Cloudflare Access supports like RDP and other stuff as well, which is neat. And it's getting better one day at a time.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Yeah. Cool. Well, good. Well, we've rambled for a good hour, so
yeah. I did want to mention, like,
wait, you're going back to Soda Wars, or what are you going back to?
I'm going now. I'm just going to bring up some other random thing. No, I was just going to mention, like, from because we didn't talk much about it, but you did mention that we were at Global AppSec DC, and I did want to just real briefly. I think it was a really well done. I think it was a really tough conference because OWASP did several conferences back to back to back, and also those conferences tended to overlap with, like, because I think AppSec Global DC was right after DerbyCon, and then there was like the DEF CON Black Hat, but like right before that was Tel Aviv. So it's been tough for the organizers, and I think they did a really good job. So I was just gonna shout out to like Abdullah, Manawar, Ben Pick, and Sean Porras for like, basically bringing that all together for it to, and everyone else who was involved to make that happen. So it was pretty good. It was a good conference. We got to meet some good people. And then next month we're going to be in Australia, Melbourne again, which was cool because again, Julian Burton, who runs that out in Melbourne, he was at Global AppSec DC, and we got to hang out and get drinks and food and stuff. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So we'll be doing that next. So Amsterdam next week, Australia the month after, in last week, October, and then Black Hat London. If you're interested in attending our training at Black Hat London, we'll be there the first week of December.
Yeah.
Are y'all going to do 2020 AppSec Cali? That was my favorite conference of the year.
Yeah.
Maybe.
All right.
Yeah, no. The only reason I say that is like we've both been traveling a heck of a lot, and for me specifically, like I'm just could use a break, so I may or may not show up. I'm not sure. I love the conference. I think the conference is amazing. Like it's a great location. It's right there on the beach in Santa Monica. You cannot get much better of a location, and the speakers and the crowd. I think that's an interesting one because the crowd is like basically all the people whose blogs and whose Twitter feed and basically all the people that I get information from, they're all there as attendees or speakers or both.
Yep. No, yeah, like I'm sure I'll be down there for that. Just depends on, I don't know if we're going to be doing the training this year just because we've been doing it quite a bit. It may actually just be, we'll submit for like a CFP or just try and come down for it. One of the two. So
cool.
What else are you going to, Evan? I mean, like we always ask the guests like where people can meet you or, find you online, that kind of stuff.
I'm still mulling around besides Lisbon, which is Portugal. And we recently announced our CloudFlare office in Portugal. And so it'd be great to check in there with the security team. And also, since we have folks over there on the security team, and then it'd be great to do, I want to do, I try not to do a lot of conferences because usually when I go, I'm speaking and it's just a lot of work. And I don't, when I go to conferences and I'm not speaking, I don't really go to talks. I don't really attend much just because I don't enjoy the talks. It's just hard for me to sit around and with all the people there. So the other two conferences I'm looking at are the AppSec Cali I just mentioned because it was just great on the beach, all the nice people in the sun. And then the last one is LocomocosSec. I haven't made it out ever to LocomocosSec. And so I'm trying to, I'll probably try to this year.
Oh, wow. You had that all like queued up, didn't you, Ken?
Yeah, I had it queued up because I was actually going to mention on October 18th, the CFP goes live for Locomocosec. So,
and what is Locomocosec?
Yeah, so
heard of this one before.
It's this beautiful place where all these smart people get together and basically you watch talks and then you hang out at the pool and you get some drinks and you just laugh a lot. Just in general, have a good time. Usually at the Seth's expense because he's not there. And so we just tweet a lot of pictures and at Seth,
yeah,
just
there you go.
What's going on /give him crap for not attending. So yeah. So this year I expect Seth might be there.
Maybe.
Is Hawaii
for you? Yeah, it's a hard sell. Yeah, just got to keep the cards close to the chest.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll post a link, obviously, to your Twitter account, things like that, Evan.
Great.
People can, and people can always find us all online. I mean, I think we're all on Twitter, or in the different Slack channels. If you haven't joined, feel free to join AppSec Slack, or find us on some of those other channels that are shared amongst the group. But thanks again for joining and rambling all over the world with us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's always
AppSec, absolute Coca-Cola.
Yes. Yeah, there you go.
Slam Bam, Diet Dr.
Pepper. There you go. Got it. Sweet. Appreciate it.
People are getting the most bang for their no money that they pay for this. So
yeah. There you go.
All right.
Sweet.
Well, thanks for having me, y'all. It's been fun, and I look forward to the next episode, watching who you have next.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Definitely. Your time is valuable. We appreciate you spending it with us and our viewers.
Great. All right. Well, I think that's it for today. Ken, anything else?
Nope.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining.
Thank you.
Bye. All right. Take care.